Think about it. You're holding a map. It says, empty land. But when you go there, you find massive marble columns, half buried in the ground, half still standing. No one can tell you how they were built, because everyone who could tell you is either dead, silenced, or treated as if they never existed. That's what they call the Wild West. But they never gave you the full story. We all know cowboy movies. John Wayne, clouds of dust, tin-roofed towns, weary-faced settlers. Brave people came, built cities on empty land, brought civilization. That's what they taught us in schools, showed us in cinemas, wrote in books. But now I need to ask you something. What if those enormous courthouses, those grand train stations, those high-ceilinged hotel lobbies you saw in those films, were never built from scratch? What if you weren't watching construction, but eluding? Think about that for a moment. Go back to 1816, the period history calls the year without a summer. Historians blame it on a small volcanic eruption and move on. But some researchers talk about something far more serious. A massive, global catastrophe with an effect close to nuclear winter. Something that blocked the sky, destroyed harvests, and killed millions. And right after this disaster, starting in the 1820s, explorers began entering the interior of North America. And what do these explorers find? Empty lands, desolate plains, territories where no one lives. So, who lived on these lands before? And where did they go? Now let me show you something. San Francisco, 1849. The year the gold rush began. Thousands of people flooding west. But what do they find when they arrive? Not tents or straw huts. Stone buildings. Long facade, high-windowed, magnificent structures. Who built them? On a piece of land, discovered only a few years earlier, with no population. Where did these buildings come from? Official history tells you they built fast. Americans were hardworking. But these buildings have granite facades. They have ornate decorations inspired by Roman arches. They have interconnected tunnels beneath the ground. In just a few years, in an era where materials were hauled by horse cart, was this possible? Of course not, because they weren't built. They were found and presented as if they had been constructed. Have you heard of Tartaria? Most people haven't, or they heard it and dismissed it as a conspiracy theory. But look, open European maps from the 1700s. You'll see it in all of them. Greater Tartaria, a vast civilization stretching from Mongolia to Siberia, all the way to the shores of North America. It had its own energy networks, its own architectural language, its own technology. Then, at the start of the 1800s, it disappears from maps, removed from encyclopedias, erased from books. And what replaces it? There was nothing there. Empty lands. That's exactly where the cowboy story begins. Have you heard of the mud flood? In many cities around the world, especially in buildings from the 1800s, something strange catches the eye. Basement floors have been converted into ground floors, or the original entrance doors are below today's street level, as if, at some point, all these buildings were partially buried in earth and then cleaned up. Researchers call this the mud flood. After the 1816 catastrophe, the layer of mud and ash that covered the land was so thick it could have buried an entire civilization. And on the remains of that civilization, the newcomers inherited its letters, its columns, its legacy. But they erased the names of its true owners and made sure they were forgotten. Now go back to a cowboy film. Look at those newly founded towns. Pay attention. Notice the harmony of the buildings. Why a small Texas town has an opera house. Why the city hall of a tiny Nevada settlement looks as grand as a European palace. They told you. People built with hope. No. Those buildings were already there. The newcomers cleaned them, restored them, or simply walked in and hung their own name above the door. What about the railroads? Think about that legendary project from the 1860s. The railroad that split a continent in two. Tens of thousands of workers crossing mountains, building bridges, digging tunnels. At an incredible pace, hundreds of kilometers of track laid every year. Historians call it the American miracle. But on certain routes, railway engineers documented that before they even began digging, the tunnels were already there. Underground passages, pre-excavated channels. No one knows who dug them. No official explanation. But the rails went right through them. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake. Most of the city was leveled. And as the rubble was being cleared, something emerged. Beneath the city, a tunnel network no one knew existed. Interconnected rooms, corridors, some tiled, some ornately decorated. They called them secret Chinese tunnels and moved on. But these tunnels stretched far beyond Chinatown, and the paving stones were much, much older. So how did they hide something this big? Simple. First, they destroyed the books. Libraries containing works from before 1800 repeatedly burned down. Not just Alexandria, we mention that only as a reminder, but in Europe, in America, hundreds of libraries vanished. Then they changed the surnames. An entire generation of children was given new family names. Their roots were severed. And then, to silence the people who had witnessed this transition, who remembered it, who spoke about it, they invented an institution. Asylums. Starting in the 1840s, mental institution construction exploded across North America and Europe. A response to the illnesses of the age, they say. What illness? The illness of not having lost your memory? Think about Niagara Falls, still one of the world's largest energy generation sites today. Tesla worked there. AC current was born there. But there's something interesting in Tesla's notes. He didn't invent that system from scratch. He built upon something that already existed. Tartaria researchers explain it this way. Niagara was a node in Tartaria's global energy network. The waterfall was a power source, and that power source was found abandoned after the mud flood. Its new owners invented it, put their name on it. In other words, they stole it. Do you understand now? The Wild West legend is not a founding myth. It is the cover-up itself. Cowboy films tell you that brave people built something out of nothing. But those films are actually a memory erasure operation. Every time you watch, every time you hear that music, every time you see that dust cloud, your subconscious accepts. There was nothing before. Then we came. We built it. We brought civilization. But here is the truth. There was something before. Something large, advanced, connected. Then a catastrophe came. Then a new power arrived. And that power both inherited the ruins and recorded them in history as its own creation. The next time you watch a cowboy film, look at that enormous courthouse. Look at that train station. Look at those hotel stairs. And ask yourself, how did these people build this? If you found the answer, you've taken one more step toward real history. If you haven't, let me tell you, they didn't build it. They inherited it. And for 150 years, we've been accepting their story as the truth. But sooner or later, the truth always comes out.